June walked nervously through the bustling marketplace of New Harmony, the first human settlement on Talara. At 14, he still hadn't adjusted to living alongside the Miri, a highly advanced alien species that regarded humans as primitive newcomers. Don't stare at them too long, his classmate Hannah had warned earlier. They already think we're underdeveloped. The Miri moved with elegant precision through the market, their tall, slender forms and luminescent skin marking them as different from the humans who had arrived just 3 years ago. Most Miri merchants barely acknowledged human customers, considering it beneath their dignity. As June rounded a corner, he noticed a hunched figure sitting against a wall. An elderly Miri woman in tattered clothing stretched out a trembling hand as passers-by deliberately avoided her. None of her people stopped. "She's been there for days," a human vendor whispered to June. "The Miri don't believe in helping those who can't contribute. Best leave it alone." But something in the woman's eyes caught June's attention. Despite her ragged appearance, they held a remarkable clarity. He approached slowly and knelt beside her. "Are you hungry?" he asked, offering his lunch. A group of young Miri nearby noticed and began to laugh. "Look at the human, wasting resources on a worthless street dweller," one said loudly in accented English. "Such primitive sentimentality." June felt his face burn with embarrassment, but held the food steady. The old woman looked up, her eyes meeting his with unexpected intensity. "Thank you, child of Earth," she said in a voice much stronger than her appearance suggested. "Kindness is rarer than starlight here." June had always felt out of place in New Harmony. His family had moved to Talara when he was 11, part of the first wave of human settlers allowed to colonize a small region of the Miri homeworld. The aliens had agreed to the arrangement after long negotiations, seeing humans as an interesting but ultimately inferior species. Every day was a struggle. At school, the few Miri students kept to themselves. While at home, his parents constantly reminded him to be respectful and not cause trouble. It felt like walking on eggshells everywhere he went. The old woman took the sandwich from June's hand with delicate fingers. Despite her ragged appearance, her movements were graceful. "What's your name?" June asked quietly. "Names have power," she replied with a small smile. "You may call me Nari." The Miri youths had moved closer, their tall frames towering over June. There were 3 of them, wearing the distinctive silver bands of the upper education levels. "Human boy thinks he's a hero," said the tallest one, his skin glowing slightly brighter with apparent amusement. "Saving one useless life instead of focusing on collective progress." June kept his eyes down. He knew better than to argue with Miri students. Their families held positions of power in the colony government, and complaints about their behavior tended to disappear. "Leave him," Nari said suddenly, her voice carrying an unexpected authority. "Your time would be better spent studying the virtue of compassion rather than mocking it." The young Miri's luminescence flared in what June had learned was a sign of anger or surprise. "You dare speak to me, street waste," he hissed. June felt a surge of protectiveness. "Please just go," he said, standing up. "She's not bothering anyone." The marketplace had grown quieter. Humans and Miri alike were watching the confrontation, though no one intervened. Such was the way in New Harmony. Observe, but don't get involved. "Do you know who I am, human?" the Miri youth asked, leaning down until his face was inches from June's. "My parent sits on the high council that permits your kind to remain here." "I know," June replied softly. "You're Da, son of Councillor Ta." Everyone knew the councillor's son, famous for his arrogance and cruelty. Day seemed pleased to be recognized. "Then you understand that your actions reflect on all humans. Wasting time on those who cannot contribute makes your entire species appear inefficient and irrational." Nari calmly continued eating the sandwich, seemingly unbothered by the tension around her. June noticed something odd. When she thought no one was looking, her hunched posture straightened slightly, and her eyes scanned the crowd with shocking alertness. "The way we treat the weakest among us shows who we truly are," June said, repeating something his grandmother had told him before they left Earth. He hadn't fully understood it then, but facing Dad now, the words felt right. Dad laughed, a sound like chiming crystal. Primitive philosophy. This is why humans will never advance beyond basic space travel. He turned to his companions. Come, we waste valuable time here. As the Miri youths walked away, Jun sat back down beside Nari. I'm sorry about that. Do not apologize for the behavior of others, she said. Tell me, why did you stop to help when none of your kind or mine would? Jun thought for a moment. I guess, because no one else did. Nari studied him with those clear, intelligent eyes that seemed at odds with her appearance. A simple answer, yet profound. What is your name, child of Earth? Jun. Well, Jun, she said, finishing the last bite of sandwich. Perhaps tomorrow you will tell me more about why humans traveled so far to live among those who barely tolerate them. I could bring more food, Jun offered. That would be welcome. For a moment, Nari's skin seemed to shimmer with a faint pattern of light, but it disappeared so quickly Jun thought he had imagined it. As Jun walked home that evening, he felt lighter than he had in months. For the first time since arriving on Talara, he had made a choice that felt entirely his own, not guided by his parents' caution or his teacher's strict rules for interacting with the Miri. He didn't notice the figure watching him from the shadows, nor did he see how the beggar woman stood with perfect posture once he was gone, her eyes tracking his path home with thoughtful consideration. Every day after school, Jun made his way to the marketplace. The path became so familiar that his feet moved automatically, weaving through the crowded streets of New Harmony to the quiet corner where Nari sat waiting. You're back, she said, her eyes brightening as he approached. Today, like most days, Jun had brought a small container of food, leftovers from home, and a few fruits he had bought with his allowance. I promised I would come, Jun replied, sitting cross-legged beside her. The ground was hard and cold, but he didn't mind. Over the past 3 weeks, their meetings had become the highlight of Jun's days. Unlike other Miri, Nari listened when he spoke and asked questions about Earth and human life. She never treated him as less intelligent or worthy. Tell me more about the stars where you came from, Nari said, taking a small bite of fruit. Did your people name them as we do? We had constellations, patterns of stars that looked like animals or heroes from old stories, Jun explained. My favorite was Orion, a hunter in the night sky. Nari nodded thoughtfully. The Miri see patterns too, but we see them as moments in time, frozen in light. She pointed upward, though the sky was still bright with afternoon sun. The stars remember what people forget. When the 2 moons align, truth reveals itself. Jun wasn't always sure what Nari meant with these sayings, but he enjoyed hearing them. Sometimes she would tell him stories about ancient Miri civilizations, tales of great leaders, and terrible mistakes that weren't in any of his school books. How do you know so much about history? He asked once. Nari smiled mysteriously. I have watched for a very long time. A group of Miri passed by, their faces turning away when they saw Jun with the beggar woman. This happened often, but Jun had stopped caring what they thought. When Jun returned home that evening, his parents were waiting for him. His father's face was stern, arms crossed over his chest. Your teacher called today, he said. You've been late to your afternoon science lessons 3 times this week. Jun looked down at his shoes. I lost track of time. With that homeless Miri woman, his mother added. The whole community is talking about it, Jun. Do you understand how this looks? What does it matter how it looks? Jun asked. She's alone and hungry. No one else helps her. His father sighed heavily. This isn't why we came to Talara. The Miri already think we're too emotional. You're not helping our position here. So I should just ignore someone who needs help because it might make us look bad. Jun felt his face growing hot. You don't understand politics, his father said. Things are getting tense. The water allocation for the human sector was cut again yesterday. We need to be careful." Later that night, Jun overheard his parents talking in low voices about the growing troubles. Resources that had seemed plentiful when humans first arrived were becoming scarce in certain sectors. The Miri Council blamed human inefficiency, while the human representatives argued the allocations were unfair from the start. The next day at school, Jun's teacher, Mr. Park, called a special community meeting for all human students. "I'd want to make sure you understand the current situation," Mr. Park explained, his face serious. "The Miri Council has restricted our water usage by another 15%. They claim our farming methods waste too much." A girl raised her hand. "But my dad says our farms are more productive per square meter than theirs." "That may be true," Mr. Park nodded, "but productivity isn't their primary concern. Efficiency is." He wrote the word on the board. "The Miri value using the least resources possible, even if it means producing less. They view our methods as wasteful, and they view compassion as weakness. Their society values technological advancement and efficiency above all else." Jun thought about Nari, alone in the marketplace. "That doesn't seem right," he said without meaning to speak aloud. Mr. Park looked at him with sympathy. "It's a different culture, Jun. Not better or worse, just different. We need to understand them if we're going to live here." But as the days passed, Jun wasn't sure if understanding was enough. When he told Nari about the water restrictions, she didn't seem surprised. "A society that abandons mercy abandons its future," she said quietly. "Remember that, young one." Sometimes Nari would ask strange questions about the human settlement. How many schools did they have? Who made decisions when the colony leaders disagreed? What did humans do with their sick and elderly? Jun answered as best he could, though he wondered why she was so curious. One afternoon, Jun arrived at their usual meeting place to find Nari surrounded by a group of Miri officials. Their sleek uniforms marked them as city guards. "This area is being cleared," one told Jun when he tried to approach. "Move along." "But my friend," Jun began. "No permanent residence is allowed in market zones," the guard interrupted. "The vagrant will be relocated." Through a gap between the guards, Jun saw Nari. She didn't look afraid, despite being pulled to her feet by two officers. Instead, she caught his eye and gave a slight shake of her head, warning him not to interfere. That night, Jun couldn't sleep. He worried about where Nari had been taken and if she was safe. The Miri had facilities for their homeless population, but he had heard they were cold, clinical places where residents were expected to contribute labor regardless of their condition. To his surprise, when he returned to the marketplace the next day, Nari was back in her usual spot, as if nothing had happened. "How did you get away from the guards?" Jun asked, kneeling beside her. Nari's eyes twinkled with amusement. "Sometimes being overlooked has its advantages. Few pay attention to where the unwanted go." She paused, her expression becoming serious. "Dark times approach, Jun. The alignment grows closer." "What alignment?" "The two moons," she said, pointing to the sky where one of Taylora's moons was visible even in daylight. "When they align, change comes. Always." Jun didn't understand, but he felt the truth in her words. Something was coming. The tension in the colony grew thicker each day, like the heavy air before a storm. The crisis had been building for weeks. Water shortages in the human sector had led to failed crops. Food supplies were running low. After repeated requests for help were denied, the human colony leaders had called for a public meeting with the Miri Council. The central plaza of New Harmony filled with people from both species. Humans gathered on one side, their faces worried. The Miri stood opposite, their tall forms perfectly still, their skin glowing softly in the fading evening light. Jun stood with his parents near the back of the human crowd. Everyone was talking at once. "They're going to send us back to Earth," one woman said. "They can't," another replied. "The treaty gives us 50 years. Jun's father put a protective hand on his shoulder. "Stay close," he warned. "This could get unpleasant." At the front of the plaza, a platform had been set up. 7 Miri counselors sat in a perfect row, their ceremonial robes gleaming with embedded technology. Facing them were the 5 human representatives, looking small and plain by comparison. Governor Kim, the human colony leader, spoke first. "Honorable Council, we come to you with urgent concerns. The latest water restrictions have caused severe damage to our food production. We request an emergency allocation to prevent a humanitarian crisis." Councillor Tae, leader of the Miri Council, listened without expression. When Governor Kim finished, Tae touched a small device on his wrist. A holographic display appeared above the platform, showing complex patterns of water usage. "Your request is denied," Ta said, his voice clear and emotionless. "Our analysis shows humans continue to use 22.7% more water per person than Miri citizens. The inefficiency is unacceptable." Governor Kim stepped forward. "With respect, Counselor, our biological needs are different. Our children are suffering from dehydration. Surely there can be some accommodation." "Accommodation leads to dependency," interrupted another counselor. "The human colony must adapt or reconsider its viability." Angry murmurs spread through the human crowd. June felt sick. He had seen the water lines at school, children waiting hours for their daily ration. His own family had stopped washing clothes, using the water instead for drinking and cooking. As the argument continued, June noticed movement at the edges of the plaza. Miri security forces were clearing away bystanders they considered unimportant. With a jolt, he spotted Neri being pushed by 2 guards. "Look," he said to his father, pointing. "They're hurting people." Before his father could respond, Jum saw one guard shove Neri roughly to the ground. Without thinking, he broke away from his parents and pushed through the crowd. "June, no," his mother called after him, but he was already running. He reached Neri in seconds, placing himself between her fallen form and the guards. "Stop," he shouted, his voice cracking. "She's done nothing wrong." The entire assembly fell silent. Hundreds of eyes turned toward the disruption. On the platform, Councillor Tai rose to his feet, staring down at June with obvious disgust. "This display of emotional irrationality proves our point about humans," he announced, his voice amplified through the plaza. "Remove the boy and the vagrant." The guards moved toward June. He stood his ground, though his legs trembled. Behind him, he felt Neri stirring. "No," came her voice, suddenly strong and commanding. "The time for hiding is over." June turned and watched in amazement as Neri stood. Her hunched posture straightened. She seemed to grow taller, her shoulders squaring, her chin lifting. The ragged clothes that had marked her as a beggar seemed to shimmer and transform, the dirty fabric taking on a silvery sheen. Most shocking of all, intricate patterns of light appeared on her skin, flowing like liquid silver across her face and hands. The patterns formed complex symbols that June had seen only in the most important Miri buildings. Gasps rose from the Miri crowd. Many fell to their knees, their luminescent skin dimming in what June had learned was a sign of extreme shock or awe. On the platform, Councillor Tae's face had gone ashen, the glow fading from his skin. "Queen Nari," he whispered, but in the silence, everyone heard. "It cannot be." "Yet it is," she replied, her voice carrying effortlessly across the plaza. "I am Neri, sovereign of the Miri people, who chose to walk among you unrecognized, as our tradition demands of each ruler once in their lifetime." June could hardly believe what he was hearing. The beggar woman he had befriended was the queen of the Miri. It seemed impossible, yet the reaction of the Miri people left no doubt. They were prostrating themselves before her, their foreheads touching the ground. Queen Nari placed a gentle hand on June's shoulder. "This child," she said, "showed kindness when no one else would. He saw value in a life that all others, including my own people, deemed worthless." She walked forward, and the crowd parted before her. Even the security guards stepped back, their eyes downcast. June followed, not knowing what else to do. As they approached the platform, Councillor Tai, and the other council members descended, kneeling as Queen Nari approached. "My queen," Ta said, his voice shaking. "We had no word of your return. The 100-day walk was not scheduled for another cycle." "That was the point, Counselor," Queen Nari replied. "A test is meaningless if the subjects know they are being tested." She ascended the platform and turned to face the crowd. June noticed that her appearance continued to change. The ragged dress had completely transformed into flowing robes of silver and blue. Her face, though still aged, now held an unmistakable authority. "For 100 days, I have walked among you," she announced. "I have watched how the powerful treat the powerless. I have seen what values truly guide our society." Her gaze swept over the assembled Miri, and I have been deeply disappointed. Complete silence filled the plaza. Even the humans stood motionless, sensing the importance of the moment. When did the Miri forget that efficiency without compassion is meaningless? Queen Nari asked. When did we decide that those who cannot contribute should be discarded? She gestured toward June, who stood awkwardly at the base of the platform. This human child, new to our world and treated as inferior by many of my people, showed greater wisdom than my entire council. He stopped to help when all others walked by. Councillor Tai kept his eyes on the ground. "We have only followed the path of advancement that you yourself established, my queen." "No," Queen Nari said firmly. "You have followed a perversion of my teachings. I spoke of balance between technological progress and spiritual wisdom. You chose to remember only half." She turned to address the humans, many of whom still looked confused by the sudden turn of events. "People of Earth," she said, "I apologize for the treatment you have received. The restrictions placed upon your community will be lifted immediately." She looked at Governor Kim. "We have much to discuss about a more equitable arrangement." As darkness fell, the 2 moons of Talara appeared in the sky, drawing closer to alignment. Queen Nari pointed to them. "As I told young June, when the 2 moons align, truth reveals itself." She smiled. "Tonight, we begin anew. For 100 days, I have lived among you without title or privilege," Queen Nari announced to the stunned crowd. "I have watched and waited to see who among my people remembers the first principle of our ancestors." The central plaza remained absolutely silent. Even the night insects seemed to hold their songs in pause. The Miri people stayed kneeling, their luminescent skin dimmed to its lowest glow, a sign of extreme reverence in their culture. Queen Nari gestured toward June, who stood frozen in disbelief at the base of the platform. He couldn't process what was happening. Just hours ago, he had been bringing food scraps to a homeless woman. Now that same woman was revealed as the monarch of an entire species. "Thousands of Miri passed me each day," the queen continued, her voice carrying easily across the plaza. "None stopped. None offered help. Yet this human child, with no obligation to our ways, showed the compassion that should define us." June felt his face grow hot as hundreds of eyes turned to him. His parents had pushed their way to the front of the crowd and stood watching with expressions of shock and confusion. "Our ancestors built our civilization on the first principle," Queen Nari said, "that the measure of advancement is not in our technology, but in how we treat the least fortunate among us." The Miri council members had remained kneeling, their heads bowed low. Councillor Tai, who had moments ago been dismissing human concerns, now looked small and frightened. "We have failed your test, Sovereign," Tai admitted, his voice barely audible. "Not you alone," Queen Nari corrected. "Our entire society has drifted from its foundation. We have pursued technological perfection at the cost of our spiritual wisdom." She descended from the platform with graceful steps and approached June. Up close, he could see that her face, though still elderly, was transformed by the intricate light patterns flowing beneath her skin. Her eyes were the same, though, clear and kind, just as they had been in the marketplace. "You saw me when others looked away," she said softly to him. "You shared your food when others hoarded theirs. You listened to my stories when others dismissed them as the ramblings of a vagrant." June swallowed hard. "I didn't know you were the queen." Queen Neri smiled. That is precisely why your actions matter, young one. Kindness given without expectation of reward or recognition is the only true kindness. She turned to address both humans and Miri once more. Humans were not randomly selected for this colony experiment, she revealed. I chose them because of what we have lost, the capacity to balance logic with compassion. Our future depends on learning from each other. A murmur ran through both crowds. The humans looked at each other in confusion, while the Miri whispered in their musical language. Is this true? Governor Kim asked, stepping forward. You personally invited Earth to send colonists. Indeed, Queen Nari nodded. Though your officials believed they had discovered Taylora independently, it was my signal beacons that guided your exploratory vessels here. But why? Someone from the human section called out. Because the Miri stand at a crossroads, she answered. For 1,000 years, we have advanced our technology, extended our lives, and created wonders that would seem like magic to most species. Yet in that same time, we have grown cold. Efficient, yes, but without heart. Councillor Ta had risen to his feet, though he kept his eyes lowered. We believed we were following your vision, Sovereign. After your departure a century ago, the Council interpreted your instructions as a mandate for technological advancement above all else. A convenient interpretation that allowed you to ignore your responsibilities to those in need. Queen Neri said sharply. Did you think I would not notice how the resources are distributed? How those deemed unproductive are pushed to the margins? She walked slowly among the kneeling Miri, touching some gently on the shoulder as she passed. When she reached the human section, she did the same, her touch bringing surprised gasps from those who felt the subtle energy that flowed from her. Tomorrow, we begin anew, she declared. The water restrictions on the human settlement will be lifted immediately. The neglected sectors of our own cities will receive equal resources. And the Council. She looked back at the 7 Miri leaders who had been in charge. The Council will be dissolved and rebuilt with wisdom, rather than efficiency as its guiding principle. The 2 moons of Taylora had drawn closer together in the night sky, nearly aligned. Queen Nari pointed to them. As the ancient saying goes, when the 2 moons align, truth reveals itself. Tonight, we have seen truth. Now we must act upon it. The days that followed were unlike anything New Harmony had ever experienced. Queen Neri established her temporary residence in a simple building at the border between the human and Miri sections of the colony. From there, she issued a series of decrees that transformed the settlement. The old council was indeed dissolved. In its place, Queen Neri established a new joint governance system that included both Miri and humans. Resources were redistributed, with water flowing freely to the human farms once more. Schools were instructed to include both species, with exchange programs to foster understanding. Most surprisingly to everyone, Jun was summoned to the Queen's residence 3 days after the revelation in the plaza. I don't understand why she wants to see me, he told his parents as they walked nervously toward the meeting. I'm nobody important. His mother straightened his collar. You helped the Queen when she was disguised as a beggar. That makes you very important. Inside, they were led to a simple room where Queen Neri sat alone. She dismissed the guards and attendants, asking Jun's parents to wait outside. Sit with me, she said to Jun, indicating a chair across from her. The furniture was human-sized. Jun noticed, not the tall, narrow seats the Miri typically used. I have been watching you for many weeks, Queen Neri began. Not just in the marketplace, but in your school, with your friends, with your family. You have a gift for understanding others, Jun. A rare capacity to see beyond differences to the heart of things. Jun shifted uncomfortably. I just try to be nice. And that simple intention is what we need most now. Queen Neri leaned forward. I am establishing a new position in my court, a human cultural ambassador who will help bridge the gap between our peoples. I would like you to be the first. Jun's mouth fell open. Me? But I'm just 14. I don't know anything about being an ambassador. You know about kindness, she replied simply. You know about listening. The rest can be learned." She smiled at his shocked expression. "Do not worry. You will continue your studies, and the position will not be full-time until you are older. But your perspective is valuable now." When June left the meeting, he found his parents waiting anxiously. His father's eyes widened when June explained the Queen's offer. "An ambassador," he repeated. "My son." That night, as June looked out his window at the two moons, now perfectly aligned in the night sky, he thought about how much had changed in a few short days. From a lonely boy who didn't fit in, he had somehow become a symbol of the new relationship between humans and Miri. The next morning, before giving his answer to the Queen, June returned to the marketplace where he had first met Neri. The spot where she had sat as a beggar was now marked with a simple plaque. In both Miri and English, it read, "Here sat a queen, unseen by most. Remember to look with your heart." June touched the plaque and smiled. "I'll try," he promised quietly. 1 year had passed since the night of revelation in the central plaza. New Harmony looked nothing like the divided settlement it had once been. The marketplace where June had first offered food to a disguised queen now bustled with activity. Humans and Miri shopped at the same stalls, ate at the same tables, and spoke in a mixture of both languages. June stood beside Queen Neri on a wide balcony overlooking the settlement. At 15, he had grown several inches taller. His shoulders had broadened, and he carried himself with new confidence. The nervous boy who had once feared drawing attention was now the youngest ambassador in the Joint Council. "Look how far we've come," Queen Neri said, her hand sweeping across the view below. The city glowed with lights as evening approached, the silver architecture of the Miri blending with the warmer, earthier buildings of the humans. "The two moons align tonight," she remarked, pointing to the sky where Taylura's twin satellites were drawing together, "just as our societies are aligning." June nodded. The past year had been filled with challenges as both species adjusted to the new balance of power. Not everyone had welcomed the changes. Some Miri still believed humans were too primitive to be true partners, while some humans remained wary of alien technology and customs. "Remember Da?" June asked with a small smile. "He used to lead the group that mocked me for helping you." Queen Neri's skin patterns shifted in what June now recognized as amusement. "The counselor's son. Yes, I remember him well. He joined the empathy training program last month," June said. "Yesterday he asked me to help him understand why humans value art that isn't perfectly symmetrical." The empathy training program had been Neri's first initiative after restructuring the government. Young Miri learned about emotional intelligence from human teachers, while human students studied Miri scientific methods. The results had been remarkable. New technologies emerged that neither species could have developed alone. Medical treatments that combine Miri precision with human intuition, farming methods that were both efficient and sustainable. "The other students don't mock me anymore," June added. "Some of them actually think my job is important." His role as cultural ambassador had evolved over the months. At first, he had simply attended meetings and offered a human perspective. Now he helped design educational programs and mediated disputes between the species. Twice a week, he taught a class on Earth customs to curious Miri children. "A year ago today, I was bringing sandwiches to a homeless woman," June mused. "I never imagined this would be my life." Queen Neri turned to face him, her ancient eyes holding that same clarity that had first caught his attention. "I have a confession, June," she said softly. "Your arrival on that first day in the market was not entirely chance." June looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean?" "Of all the humans who came to Taylora, your capacity for compassion shone brightest. I sensed it even before we met." She smiled gently. "Some souls are like beacons across the stars. You chose me." June felt a mixture of confusion and wonder. "But I was just a kid with no friends who didn't fit in anywhere." "Precisely," Queen Neri nodded. "Those who know what it means to be excluded often understand best the value of inclusion. I watched many humans before making my appearance in the marketplace. You were the one I hoped would stop." Below them, people began gathering in the central plaza. Tonight marked the one-year anniversary of the revelation, and both species had prepared a celebration. Colorful lights hung between buildings, and tables laden with food from both Earth and Taylora lined the square. "We should join them," Queen Neri said. "It is time." As they walked through the palace corridors, Jun thought about how much had changed. The cold, sterile halls that had once intimidated him now felt familiar. Miri and human staff worked side by side, and artwork from both worlds adorned the walls. "My parents are bringing their famous kimchi," Jun mentioned as they descended the grand staircase. They were worried the Miri wouldn't like spicy food, but it's become really popular. Queen Neri laughed. "Indeed. Our medical team has been studying the benefits of fermented foods." Another example of how we learn from each other. The plaza was filled with hundreds of people when they arrived. Children from both species played games together, their laughter rising above the general conversation. Some games were traditional Earth activities like tag and hide and seek. Others were Miri games involving light patterns and mathematical puzzles. Jun spotted his parents near the central fountain. His mother waved, and he waved back. They had been skeptical when he first accepted the ambassador position, worried about his education and safety. Now they served on the Joint Agricultural Committee, teaching Miri farmers about Earth crops while learning advanced irrigation techniques. As the two moons drew closer to perfect alignment overhead, Queen Neri stepped onto a small platform. She wore simple robes tonight, without the elaborate ceremonial attire she used for official functions. The crowd fell quiet as she raised her hands. "1 year ago, truth was revealed," she began, her voice carrying easily across the plaza. "1 year ago, we remembered what truly matters." She beckoned to Jun, who joined her on the platform. "Look around you," she continued, addressing the crowd. "See what becomes possible when we recognize the value in our differences. The Miri have gained heart. The humans have gained knowledge. Together, we have created something new and wonderful." On cue, a group of children, half human, half Miri, moved to the center of the plaza. They had been practicing for weeks. The human children began to sing an Earth song, while the Miri children created complex patterns of light that danced in harmony with the music. "Let us remember this lesson," Queen Neri proclaimed as the performance continued. "True advancement comes not from technology alone, but from the courage to see value in those unlike ourselves." She placed a hand on Jun's shoulder, the simple gesture symbolizing the unexpected friendship that had changed two worlds. Above them, the two moons aligned perfectly, bathing new harmony in silver light. Later, as the celebration continued, Jun walked among the tables where humans and Miri shared food and stories. He paused at the exact spot where he had first met Neri, disguised as a beggar. A small plaque marked the place, with words in both languages. "Here compassion changed two worlds." He touched the plaque gently. A year ago, he had been a lonely boy trying to find his place. Now he understood that sometimes the smallest actions, like sharing lunch with someone in need, could change everything. In the silver moonlight, with the sounds of celebration all around him, Jun smiled. New harmony had finally earned its name.